In the Unresolved Problems segment tonight, it is estimated that 28% of the American people watched at least a part of the terrorism coverage on the initial day. We here at the Fox News Channel had our highest audiences ever. There has been some controversy, however. Last night on the David Letterman program, CBS News anchorman Dan Rather actually broke down while discussing the story. Letterman consoled him. The audience seemed to be very sympathetic to Rather in the situation. Also, some radio talk show commentators have been criticized for injecting politics into the situation, Rush Limbaugh being one of them. Joining us now from Los Angeles is Mark Schwed, a columnist for TV Guide, and here in our New York studio, Dirk Smillie, a reporter for Forbes magazine and the former director of the News Research Group. All right, Mr. Schwed, we'll go to you first. How about Dan Rather? What do you think?
Hey, the guy's been holding that one in for decades. If you're gonna, they're not supposed to cry. They're supposed to remain calm and remain objective, keep their cool. But he's not the only one, and he's the, in fact, only one who did it on an entertainment show. He didn't do it during the news. I'll tell you, Peter Jennings, just while I was watching, 4 or 5 times, the guy just, he couldn't keep it together. You can understand in a story like this how that might happen.
This is a tough question, but is it the duty of a national anchorman whom people are looking to for information, but also for kind of calming the waters? Is it their duty not to be as emotional as Dan Rather was? I didn't see the Jennings thing that you're referring to. Is it their duty to be to compartmentalize it and to adopt the demeanor that's, for example, I mean, President Bush got a little teary-eyed, but if he had broken down like Rather, I'm not sure how that would have been received.
Well, I mean, did he break down like Rather or not?
No.
He came close,
right?
And
a little
he was choked up, and a lot of people were choked up by this on the air. But to answer your question, they shouldn't be, easy to say, but they should not be crying on the air. They should not be breaking down when they're trying to cover story, especially a story like this, when it was so important. The information that they were disseminating, information that probably saved a lot of lives, too.
All right.
So they should not be crying, but you can forgive the guy,
Oh, absolutely. Mr. Smillie, how do you see it?
Well, I agree, Bill. I mean, I think you got to cut him a little bit of slack, considering he spent more hours on the air.
We're talking about Rather now.
Rather. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think of the 3 anchors, Peter Jennings, Tom Brokaw, and Dan Rather spent the most number of hours on the air. I mean, he was spending upwards of 16 hours a day, clear through the weekend, last weekend. He is a journalist first, but journalists are human, and I think that given the fact that he was on an entertainment program, an entertainment format, he wasn't in the line of fire. He wasn't in the midst of delivering breaking news. I think we can cut him that much slack.
Yeah, and the audience was clearly sympathetic, and I don't know how most Americans feel. We'll get the email tomorrow. Now, on the other front, Mr. Smillie, we've had some controversy, and I can't reveal my source, but it's impeccable and very high up, that we're criticizing some of the national syndicated radio talk show hosts for injecting politics into the situation, trying to not exactly point fingers, but and we've done this a little bit too, in explaining the story and how things got to the point where the terrorists were able to do what they did. You have to basically lay blame somewhere, because obviously we didn't stop them. Have you seen an over amount of this, or is anybody at fault here?
Well, injecting politics into this kind of debate is just the very thing that people turn to political talk show hosts for. So I don't think that they're doing anything that their audiences don't expect them to do, and they're oftentimes platforms for what their own audiences are saying.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that. Some of them stayed away from it. Mr. Schwed, what do you feel? I mean, Rush Limbaugh got in a little bit of trouble, not a little bit of trouble, but raised some controversy because he was saying, the politics of the Clinton administration led up to this, and that kind of a thing. Although he did come down very hard on Jerry Falwell.
Yeah, another guy who kind of opened up his mouth. But these guys are paid a lot of money to express their opinions, unlike newsmen whose job it is, news people whose job it is to do exactly the opposite. And sometimes the more outrageous the opinion, the better.
Not in this kind of a case, though. I got to tell you, I mean, I'm a news analyst and I'm paid to express my opinion, but I had to really adopt and think about how I was going to present the material, even when was my opinion. I thought about every single word that I said the last week.
You're a wise man, and what I was about to say is sometimes when you're a loudmouth, it's a lot easier to stick your foot in your mouth. And you know, anybody who's pointing a finger at anybody other than the people responsible for attacking the United States of America, I think they're nuts.
All right,
Also,
Mr. What do you think?
I mean, radio talk shows have become part of the media food chain, and you know, there's a report recently about Arab Americans who supposedly cheered after this incident happened last week, and you know, that was picked up by one of the networks. I don't think there's been any evidence to show that that actually happened, but someone on a political talk radio show called that information in, and it was taken as
well, it's like the internet. I mean, but I think radio talk shows are much more important than most people do, because they give the folks a chance to, you know, interact and give their opinion. And I know they've been denigrated, but I don't see that. But I do believe that all of us commentators, journalists right now have to think about the tone of what we're going to say. We shouldn't censor ourselves, but we should think about the tone. I'll give you the last word on that, Mr. Schwed.
You should be thinking about that all the time. Obviously, right now, the tone, it's much more delicate, and it's you know, you've got to be sensitive, but you should always be thinking about what you say, and especially when you're a guy like Rush Limbaugh or Howard Stern, who's actually telling people, saying that we should be nuking Afghanistan.
Well,
you
that's
have a
true.
responsibility. And,
but we can, but in certain situations, you can be a lot more demonstrative, and you can be a lot more outspoken and angry. In this situation, you have to take into account all the people who are suffering. Any final words, Mr. Smillie?
No, I completely agree. I think, you know, freedom of the press comes with responsibility, particularly at a time like this.
Right. Okay, gentlemen, thanks very much. We appreciate it. Plenty more ahead as the Factor moves along this evening. Osama bin Laden and his group obviously know they're being hunted. So what are they doing right now? We'll talk with the terrorism expert. And how badly did Jerry Falwell damage the Christian right with his comments about God's vengeance? Hope you stay tuned for those reports.